Hello, welcome to this month's episode of the Esri Law Enforcement webinar series. I'm John Beck, Esri Law Enforcement Manager, and I'm joined today by Chris Delaney, our Law Enforcement Technical Lead. Today we are very excited to introduce you all to the new Crime Analysis Toolbar for ArcGIS Pro. This toolbar is something that we have long wanted to see, and has been truly a team effort, and we'd like to thank our Esri UK colleagues and many of you in the crime analysis community who have made this possible. We're going to start today by taking a look at ArcGIS Desktop, and we will review ArcMap, ArcGIS Pro, the differences between the two, and how, if you haven't yet, you can start the migration from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro. Next, we're going to jump right into the Crime Analysis Toolbar, and Chris will give us an overview of the tools, and then he will demo some of the new functions for us. He will then talk about how you can deploy the crime analysis solution, and we will wrap up with some resources, and as time permits, we will take some questions. If you do have questions during the webinar, please feel free to type them in the chat window, and we'll either answer them directly in chat at the end of the webinar, or we'll follow up directly with you after the webinar is finished. Before we jump into the webinar, let's get started with a poll question. The first question we have today is, are you familiar with ArcGIS Pro? Yes, I know what it is and currently use it for desktop GIS. Yes, I know what it is, but I have not yet deployed it yet. Or no, I'm not familiar with it. Select one, we'll give you all a minute to answer, and then we'll look at the results.
How about you, John? Are you familiar with ArcGIS Pro? Are you using it currently?
I'm getting there. This new toolbar has really helped me start to really dive into it and explore it.
Well, I use it on an everyday basis now. I hardly ever open up ArcMap, and I love it. I think it's a really great application. And for those of you who are just starting out on that process, I think you'll find it's a really enjoyable application to use.
Yeah, since we've started working with the toolbar, I haven't opened ArcMap. Let's take a look at our results. Okay, looks like we have a mix. 35% are currently using it as their desktop GIS. 52% know what it is but haven't deployed it yet, and 13% are not familiar with ArcGIS Pro. So we have a lot to cover, so let's get started by taking a look at ArcGIS Pro and what it is and the differences between Pro and ArcMap. Of course, when most of us think of ArcGIS Desktop, we're actually thinking about ArcMap. Many people, including myself, have often referred to our desktop software as ArcMap. But technically, ArcMap is just a piece of ArcGIS Desktop. You get several distinct applications with ArcMap, including ArcMap, which is the workhorse desktop GIS and analysis software that many of us have been using for many years. It's a place where you display and explore crime data, perform spatial analysis, create symbology, and create layouts to publish and print your finished information products. Our catalog has also been a part of ArcGIS Desktop for a long time. It's always been the place to organize and manage your GIS data, things like geodatabases, raster files, map documents, etc. We have also had a couple of 3D applications, including ArcScene, that enables you to overlay and visualize data in a 3D environment, and our Globe, which is another 3D application that allows you to view large GIS data sets on a 3D global surface. ArcGIS Pro is the next generation of desktop GIS, and the cool thing about Pro is that it combines all the functions that were previously only possible in the separate applications into one complete desktop application. So everything's all in one application for you to organize and manage your data. You can perform all your analysis and visualization there, and it combines that 2D and 3D, both those 2D and 3D environments into one single application. ArcMap hasn't gone away, so don't freak out if you haven't migrated to Pro yet. It's still included with ArcGIS Desktop, but Pro is where all our future solutions and development will live and take place. Pro can be a standalone desktop application, but the real power is its ability to integrate with the larger ArcGIS platform that you see on the right. And so this includes ArcGIS Online. You get a named user subscription to ArcGIS Online with ArcGIS Desktop, and also to the rest of our platform. So all of our desktop, web, mobile, maps, and apps. Some of the key features in Pro are listed here. So Pro is a 64-bit multi-threaded application, so it's much faster and more responsive than ArcMap. It uses a simplified user interface so that it instantly looks familiar to anybody that's used Microsoft Office suite of products. It combines 2D and 3D visualization, as I already mentioned, so that you can toggle between both in a single project. And it integrates seamlessly with WebGIS, so it enables quick and easy sharing of your finished information products via web maps and apps. And as we will discuss today, Pro brings a ton of new analytical tools and enhanced capabilities to your desktop GIS. So you might be asking yourself, why should I make the change to Pro? First, as I already mentioned, it's the new flagtop desktop GIS, and ArcMap 10.6 is our last new release of ArcMap, and all of our future development will focus on Pro. If you aren't ready to migrate yet, don't worry. As I already mentioned, ArcMap will still be around for a few more years. You can run ArcMap and ArcGIS Pro side by side until you're ready to make the transition. So you can start using the tools we talk about today, and you can still run your old ArcMap projects in ArcMap. Of course, if you're joining this webinar, you might be ready to make the change, and then all the tools we talk about today and all the new tools we release will only work in Pro. Some of the new tools that we won't get to today include our new clustering tools that use machine learning to discover hidden patterns in your data. If you're interested in learning more about these, our next webinar in August, we will be focusing on this tool set. Also, Pro adds the addition of tasks, animation, charts, and integration with ArcGIS Online and all the tools available there. And finally, we'll be adding presentation mode and reporting capabilities, which will be coming soon. Pro also has a new symbology style set that will give you a lot more options for symbolizing all of your data, including crime data. And again, Pro has better performance, more flexibility, and is easier to use than with our new WebGIS. All right, let's turn it over to Chris to talk about crime analysis in ArcGIS Pro and all the new tools. Chris?
Thanks a lot, John, and thanks everybody for joining us today. John and I are really excited to share with you the work that our Esri law enforcement team has been doing over the last 6 to 8 months to build this crime analysis toolbar. It's been an idea that we've had based on feedback from the law enforcement, crime analysis, and intel analyst communities to better support the needs of law enforcement analysts. So we're really excited to share the work that we've been doing on this and to say that this is the beginning of a new solution that will continue to be supported by us, and we really view as central to our support for law enforcement analysts moving forward. So we'll continue to evolve this tool as well based on your feedback. So I mentioned before that we describe this particular crime analysis toolbar as a solution. What does a solution mean in the context of Esri speak? A solution for us is a set of, it could be maps, it could be configurable apps, or it could be tools that Esri makes available that are based on a specific industry set of needs and workflows. And we make these configurable apps, maps, and tools available for free at solutions.arcgis.com. And at solutions.arcgis.com, you can download these apps and you can use them for free on your existing ArcGIS licenses. They're fully supported over time. So if you implement them in your organization, you can get updates to them, and they continue to evolve as the technology evolves. And the purpose of these is really to help a particular industry leverage ArcGIS tools more effectively given the unique needs of their workflows and missions. And so it can help you kind of leverage these tools, spin up capabilities quicker to satisfy mission needs as they evolve, and to not get so dragged down on just learning the technology. So solutions are a really important way in which we support the law enforcement industry, and we've got a number of them that are already out and available, including a tool called Create Incident Maps that will be improved at the June ArcGIS release. This is a set of tools that can help you with automating the process of geocoding and publishing your data into your ArcGIS portal, whether that's ArcGIS Online or an on-premise portal with ArcGIS Enterprise. So it can help you get out of that morning routine of geocoding your data manually and getting it ready to do analysis, and instead you can automate that process so it happens overnight based off of some extract that you're getting from a records management or a CAD system, so you can get in and you can start working immediately. We also have some tools that provide you the beginnings of performing predictive analysis. We have some tools that enable you to leverage repeat, near repeat victimization methodologies to create prediction zones for crime types of your interest. We have some tools that support tactical operation planning. So some simple web applications to draw an operational plan for a high-risk search warrant or a barricaded gunman or a crime scene perimeter, and to collect data from the field regarding that operation and share it with folks that are involved and need to understand the plan for officer safety purposes. We have a tool for performing cell phone analysis for receiving subpoena records on cell sites and cell records and being able to visualize that data. We've recently released a whole suite of solution apps to help agencies tackle the opioid epidemic. And a lot of times that means just getting data about the nature of the opioid problem. So there's a whole host of forms for collecting information on a mobile device or on a web application for overdoses or deaths or naloxone deployments. There's apps for citizens, so you can help citizens learn where drug drop-off locations are to get rid of their unneeded prescription opioids. And then for things like tracking drug tips, whether it's heroin or other prescription opioid abuse, to follow up on. We've released recently a number of crime mapping applications so that you can spin up your own public-facing crime maps that have both simple capabilities and capabilities that support things like self-servicing of FOIA requests as it relates to crime or other incident data. And then what we're talking about today, our brand new toolbar for ArcGIS Pro, our crime analysis solution. But we will continue to evolve new solutions, and we already have a number of things that are on our plate for the rest of the year and moving forward, including we're continuing to work on building out our capabilities to support special events, whether they're planned events like sporting events or parades or festivals, or unplanned events like protests, so that you can quickly and easily spin up capabilities to share information about operational plans for that event from the field to a command post to everyone who needs to know that information. We'll also be working on a series of solutions to support crime control operational strategies, whether you're using ILP or CompStat, whatever the model that you're using, will have a set of templates that will help you support the various users in that process with the information that they need to do their job more effectively and share information to support the overall crime control strategy process. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, crime analysis tools themselves, we will continue to evolve over time. So we anticipate getting some feedback from the user community and improving these tools, adding new tools as appropriate, and as new relevant tools are added to ArcGIS Pro, incorporating those tools if they are relevant for crime analysis and intel analyst workflows. So let's talk about the actual solution itself. The solution itself, most importantly, is free. And as John mentioned before, if you have an ArcGIS desktop license, you already have ArcMap. You also already have access to ArcGIS Pro, so you don't need to have a separate license for ArcGIS Pro. It's part of the existing license that you already have. And this toolbar for ArcGIS Pro will be free for you as well to download and use. And the reason we built this toolbar was a couple of things. First and foremost, we know that it can be challenging for new analysts to get familiar with desktop GIS. So we wanted some kind of training wheels, so to speak, that help analysts focus on the key tools that they need to do their most common sets of workflows without having to know a great deal about desktop GIS. And then secondly, we know many of you are longtime ArcMap users. And even though you are all technically competent people, making changes from software that you use on a virtually everyday basis to a new version of that software can be a little hard getting going. So we also intend this solution as a way to help you who are existing analysts transition to ArcGIS Pro and get your desktop GIS modernized. Now, it should be mentioned that this toolbar is only available in ArcGIS Pro. You won't be able to get this toolbar in ArcMap. So if you're interested in these capabilities and you don't already have ArcGIS Pro, now's the time to start talking with folks in your agency about how you get that deployed onto your computer. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. The toolbar itself is a combination of out-of-the-box tools, the tools that we see analysts using most frequently to support their workflows, as well as some new custom tools that we had built specifically for the needs of analysts. And we've organized them, as you can see on the toolbar screenshot right here, we've organized them according to the crime analysis process, where tools supporting data management, whether that is importing your data or that's then cleaning or organizing your data, there's tools in the data management section for that. Then the ability to perform selections on that data, and then the ability to perform analysis. And we've grouped them kind of in a group for tactical and strategic analysis, and frankly, administrative analysis, but that made the title too long, so we just kept it at tactical and strategic. And then also some tools to support investigative analysis purposes. And then when you've done your entire analysis, you want to be able to build an information product and share that information product. And so whether it's hard copy map layouts, or whether it's publishing individual layers or web maps to your organizational portal because you want to make a story map or an app, or whether it's building a dynamic chart, you've got those information product options there. So that's a high level look at the toolbar and why we built it. And most importantly, it's free for ArcGIS Pro only. And if you have an existing ArcGIS desktop license on maintenance, you already own ArcGIS Pro, and you can utilize this tool today. Let's take a look at the individual tools that we've incorporated into this toolbar now. The first section, data management, has about 10 unique tools with the following core purpose. First, to get your data on the map, and for that we've got the standard add data button, bringing in an X and Y table, being able to render that data that you already have X and Y's for as a feature class, and geocoding data. And then once you've got your data on the map, we have a bunch of different tools that help you do cleaning and modification of that data. So we've got a tool for converting time fields. This is not a new tool. It's actually a tool that exists already out of the box, but is a tool that a lot of analysts are not familiar with. And what this tool helps you do is when you have data that comes into ArcGIS as you've got a date time data, but it exists in a text field, it helps you translate that data from a text field into an actual date field that you can work with. There's also a tool that helps you convert coordinate notation. This becomes very important internationally when analysts are working with different projection and grid systems. In the United States, it's most common that you may want to switch from a local projection like State Plane to WGS or Web Mercator. We also have a new tool that enables you to create new fields for date parts. So this is really handy when you need to do charting, or you want to be able to do counts by day of the week or by month or by year. All you have to do with this tool is point it to the date field, and then it will spin up in your data new fields for each date part that you select. And I'll show that in just a few minutes. There is a simpler version of a spatial join. We call it the Append Attributes from Polygon tool. So in this case, you've got your crime data, but it doesn't have the neighborhood that the incident occurred in, or it doesn't have the car beat that it occurs in. This is a simple tool for appending that information from a polygon layer into your point layer. And then, and so that's also a new custom tool. And then the last tool that's in this section that we call Enhance Attributes is called Enrich layer. Now, this is not a new custom tool. It's an out-of-the-box tool, but it is a tool that consumes online services and thus consumes credits through ArcGIS Online. So if you want to use this tool, you need to have credits accessible, and you can do that by talking to the individual in your agency who is responsible for administering your licensing for Esri. But what's really powerful for analysts with this tool is it enables you to reach back into Esri's library of thousands of data sets and enrich your data with that data from Esri. And the best use case example for that in crime analysis is, let's say you've got some neighborhood boundaries or your police precinct or district boundaries, and you want to be able to calculate crime rates for each of those areas, but the boundaries do not align with census blocks or census tracts. So it can be very difficult to get an accurate count of population because of that misalignment between the census areas and your boundary area. This tool enables you to take that neighborhood or take that police beat area and apply an apportionment algorithm, reaching back into Esri's library of data around population, and achieve a real standard value for that population information based on internationally standardized methodologies for apportionment. So it's a very easy way to get any kind of data that you want, demographic data or other socioeconomic data, consumer data, things of that nature, and bring that data into your layers and add value to the data that exists inside your layers. In addition, we also have a couple of tools that help you automate data import and publishing. You'll see them right here. They're listed as setup, import, and import incidents. These are actually part of a separate solution that I mentioned before called Create Incident Maps. But what these enable you to do is, if you have a routine process where you get an extract of data every night from your records management system, and maybe it sits in a network drive and it's an Excel spreadsheet or a CSV, and you have to go through a process every day of geocoding that data so you can start to work with it. What these tools will let you do is build a configuration file that says, hey, go to this location, get this file, geocode it with this address locator, and update either this local file or this service that exists in my ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise portal. And then you can run, if you do this the same way that every single day, it'll build this configuration file, and then all you'll have to do every morning is go say, all right, see this configuration file, load that and import the new incidents into my my layer or to my service in my portal. You can also automate that process entirely using Windows Task Scheduler. So it becomes a great way to alleviate a lot of the daily burden of the many manual clicks that you would otherwise have to do to get your data ready to perform analysis. These help streamline, get your data ready for analysis so you can come into work and get going. The second section of the toolbar is the selection section. And frankly, there's really only one thing that's new to out-of-the-box tools in this section of the toolbar. We have all the standard selection options. So you can select by drawing, freehand lassos, or by polygons. You can select by attributes. You can select by intersections or proximity to other layers. But we've added a new tool to the select options that, if there's anything that we're proud of in the toolbar, this might be the thing that we're most proud of. As all of you know who are on the webinar, it can be really challenging to work with date and time queries in ArcGIS. You have to write a really long SQL statement string to get at precise combinations of various date parts to get at what you're looking for. But often you have very specific date needs when you're querying data in ArcGIS. We've built this tool, the Select by Date and Time tool, to essentially make it much easier to perform date time selections. Now you have all sorts of different standard checkbox or drop-down options instead of having to write a SQL query. So if you want to be able to select dates using multiple fields, so a start date and an end date, or an occur from and occur to field, you can use that. You can select by a specific date or a date range. You can select by last X number of days. So if you want to have that dynamic selection query, show me the last 28 days, you can do that. And you can also do it if you're working on data that's super fresh, so AVL data or LPR data, data that you're working with the same day and you need to see, show me in the last 3 hours. You can use your current system time even to perform that query. So it's looking like immediately from your current time backwards. Otherwise, it can start, the previous day. You've got the ability to search by hours. One thing I should mention about the dynamic time ranges is that we've also built in a capability to search by a comparative time period, which is like the previous period. So in this example on the screenshot, it's creating a selection for the last 28 days. There's another option in this dropdown called comparative time period that will basically search for and select the 28 days prior to the current 28 days. So making that kind of selection easier for you as well. You can select by days of the week, you can select by months, and all of those selections can be cumulative. So you can build a compound selection that is enabling you to say, hey, I'm only interested in incidents that happened on Thursday, Friday, Saturday in January, February, and March between 7 p.m. and midnight. So those powerful kinds of queries that are otherwise really challenging to write in SQL are now just a couple of clicks. Well, there's one other functionality in here that's really interesting that's new to ArcGIS Pro that doesn't exist in ArcMap, and it's the ability to take a selection that you've made and create a new temporary layer from it. So instead of just selecting the values that fit your criteria and then you having to go through the process of exporting out a separate layer, you can press a little button that says layer from selection, and that'll create a temporary layer that's just that subset of data that enables you to continue on with your analysis. It's a handy time saver that's new to ArcGIS Pro that we've added into this toolbar because we think it's a relevant way to perform your selections and then carry on with your work. The analysis section, the thing that everybody's been waiting for. What are the new capabilities that are in the analysis section? Well, out of the box, there's a bunch of the most commonly utilized tools that we see analysts using. So you've got summary statistics up there. You've got your buffering tools. You have your kernel density tools. Now, the kernel density isn't free with the toolbar. You still have to have spatial analyst extension. So if you don't have spatial analyst extension, this is going to be grayed out for you when you use the toolbar. So you do need to have spatial analyst extension in order to utilize the density analysis tool. If you need statistically significant hotspots, you can utilize the optimized hotspot tool, which is applying GEDIS-ORG GI star to your data. Or if you want to be able to do some space-time analysis, which is performing GEDIS-ORG GI star over slices of time and then understanding how hotspots temporally change over time, you can use our space-time analyses tools and the emerging hotspot tool to start to explore how hotspots change over time. So in addition to those out-of-the-box tools, we have a whole bunch of brand new tools that we've built into this toolbar that are available for you to use that help make a lot of the common tasks that you do on a day-to-day basis just a little bit easier. And the first one I think is most exciting is a tool to do 80-20 analysis. So this will help you identify locations that are disproportionate relative to the total number of incidents occurring in a particular data set. So what are those problem locations that you could target for strategies in order to reduce the overall volume of crime? We also have an incident count tool. So this is just a simpler way to do counting of crimes inside of a polygon. Out of the box, the tool is just an easier way to do those spatial joins that you've been doing previously. But it also has some additional capabilities built in if you have a higher level of licensing. So if you have a standard or an advanced license, you can also utilize this tool to do counts of crimes by street segment, even if the crimes themselves were geocoded off of the center line. In addition, you can also add in a wider array of iterations if you have a desktop advanced license. So basically, you can select a field in your data set, and the tool will create not only a total count, but a unique field with counts for each value in the field that you've selected. So a good example is if you've got a crime data set and you have a field that's crime type, this tool, when you run it, will for each polygon create a total count for the polygon and then a unique count for each crime type. So it's a really handy tool that's a big time saver that previously people would have to do that iteratively. Now that does require a desktop advanced license because of some of the underlying geoprocessing tools that it requires, but it's a super helpful tool to have that's a big time saver. We have a tool that if you've got a previous period and a current period, will calculate a percent change for a polygon for you. So making that kind of work a little bit easier for you. We've got a tool that helps do density change. So if you have a current period and a previous period kernel density, you can run the tool to get that density change so you can look at in the current period what got hotter compared to the previous period and what got cooler. And then 2 tools to support investigative analyses workflows. An incident sequencing tool that enables you to create linking lines that are ordered based on the date in which the incidents occurred. So if you had a crime series or if you had AVL data and you wanted to be able to sequence those. And then we also have an incident path tool. So this enables you to link 2 different layers together based on some kind of unique value. So that could be linking motor vehicle thefts to the recovery location based on the case ID, or based on the arrest ID, linking the location of the arrest to, in a multiple arrest situation, the home locations of all of the arrestees in that arrest incident, those kinds of activities. So those are the primary new analytical tools that have been built into the toolbar. And then in addition, we've got the Create Information Products section of the toolbar. And that's just 4 simple things. First, the ability to create charts. Esri's been working a lot on improving the quality of charting inside ArcGIS Pro. At the 2.2 ArcGIS Pro release, there will be data clocks, which is really exciting. The only bad news for those of us who would really like to use data clocks for looking at hour of day, day of week, to be able to understand when a hotspot is hot, that combination is not currently supported in the first release of the data clock chart, but we're making good progress on being able to deliver a wider array of out-of-the-box charting options in ArcGIS Pro, so that's really exciting. And those charts are fully interactive with your data. So when you select a bar or a column in a chart, it will select the subsequent associated with layers, so it's very helpful for interacting with your data. You can have the abilities to build layouts. One of the cool aspects of ArcGIS Pro as it relates to layouts is you can have an infinite number of layouts, not like an ArcMap where you only get one layout. You can have multiple layouts. It's very handy if you're making a bunch of similar maps, but they need to be slightly different from each other. Or you can publish your existing map in ArcGIS Pro into your ArcGIS Online or Enterprise portal as a web map or an individual layer. Okay. So that's just a quick overview of the capabilities that have been enabled in the crime analysis toolbar at its first release. And I should mention, I hadn't really mentioned it before, that the crime analysis toolbar will be released with the June ArcGIS release. So later this month, when ArcGIS Pro 2.2 is released, this solution will also be released. And what you're looking at in the subsequent demo that I'm going to show you now is the release version of the crime analysis toolbar. So there shouldn't be any changes between what you're seeing today in the webinar and the final release version of our toolbar. So if you're not familiar with with ArcGIS Pro, this is ArcGIS Pro. If you'll notice, I have a bunch of ribbons that are organized by feature functionality type. And when I install the add-in for the crime analysis toolbar, I get a new ribbon called crime analysis. And here I can see the 3 sections of the crime analysis toolbar: the data management section, the selection section, the analysis section, and the information products section. And I have a bunch of maps that I want to walk through now to give you a flavor for some of the new capabilities and tools that exist inside of this toolbar. The first one I want to show you is under the Enhance Attributes section of data management, and I want to look at the Extract Date Parts to Field tool. When I select this, I can go over here and I can see my geoprocessing tool. and I can see the input fields for this tool. I can select my input data, which in this case I have a year of arrest data, and I select my date field, and then I can pick which date parts of that field I want to create as new fields in my data. And then if I ran the tool, I'll get an output that looks like this. And just to keep things simple, I'm not going to run the tools in real time. I'm just going to walk through some pre-processed outputs of these tools. So I have a finished version of this tool, and when I look at the attribute data of this particular tool and I scroll over here, I can see here is my arrest date. It's a full date time value. And then when I scroll over to the end, I can see that this output of this tool has created a bunch of new fields: an arrest date weekday, an arrest date hour, an arrest date month, a day, a year. So this makes it a lot easier to work with these date parts if you need them for charting. If you want to be able to take this data and do additional work with it in Excel. I find it to be most useful for when you want to do charts or other queries in web applications or dashboards. Now you have all these date parts ready to go and ready to work with. If for some reason the chart that you want to do doesn't support a date value straight out of the box. So that's an example of one of the tools that are in this particular data set. The other tool that's in here that's new that I wanted to mention is the Append Attributes from Polygon tool. And so in this case, I've got my input polygon feature is my police precincts, which I can see in light gray. And then my target point features would be my arrest data. And then I just simply pick the fields from my polygon data that I want to append into my arrest data. And I can pick multiple if I wanted to. So I could pick the station names and the agencies, or I could just pick one and then run the tool. And then I'm going to get in my attribute table of my tool output that appended name. So here you can see the station name appended. So those are the two new custom tools inside of this particular part of the toolbar. As I mentioned before, there's also some tools that support the streamlining of importing of data. I'm not going to get into these in great depth right now. We'll end up doing a additional webinar that gets at some of the functionality on these tools specifically. But the long and the short of it is, you input all of your parameters, your address location, the source of your data. It creates a configuration file, and then you can just reuse that configuration file every single day to manually improve the manual process, or you can schedule it in Windows Task Scheduler to automate it. Okay, the next thing that I want to show you is the select date and time tools. So actually, I'm going to show you the 80/20 tools first. So the 80/20 analysis tools are pretty straightforward. Here I've got some calls for service data, and I want to know which of my locations I have the highest volume of calls for service. So if I was going to target some locations for intervention to reduce call volumes and reduce officer workload, which locations would I target for that? I can select those calls as my input point features. My minimum cluster size is going to be 1. And then I can pick attributes that I want to preserve in my output layer. And the attribute that I really want to preserve is the address. So it's going to take the first address that it finds in my call data, and it's going to add that to my output so I can know the actual address associated with a particular location. And then when I run that, I get an output that looks like this. It's a graduated symbol that shows the volume of incidents at a location. And it also, by default, symbolizes the locations that account for the top 20% of all calls. So let's take a look at what we have inside this output data set. Well, we get a couple of fields. I can see for each individual location, I can see the full address. So I can select this location, and I can see, okay, well, that location is 776 South Route 59. I can see that it had 20 incidents at it. and that value accounts for 2.08% of all of the calls for service. But then I have another field here called cumulative percentage. What cumulative percentage enables me to do is to look at these top however many values that I want and identify the contribution to the total that those values make. So here I'm looking at the top 14 locations, and they account for 20% of all of our calls for service. So if we wanted to achieve some kind of reduction in call volumes, we might target specifically these 14 properties. So that's the way in which we've kind of built in the 80-20 analysis right into a tool to make it easier for you to do problem location identification. So that's the 80-20 analysis tool. The next tool that I want to show is the incident count tool. And here I have some, again, 2018 arrests. If I look at the tool, I can see the inputs are pretty straightforward here. I've got an input, a polygon, so my police precincts, and the points that I want to join to them, and then what the name of my output feature class is, and then I've got this other option that's enabled if you have an advanced license called the category field. And what I might want to do here with my arrest is I might want to get a total count by each police precinct, but then for each distinct crime type, each arrest type, I want to be able to have a count. So I could use this category field and select offense description, run my tool, and then my output of that tool is going to look like this, where I've got a graduated color map that's showing this by arrest volume, total arrest volume for each precinct. It's also providing me a label that's going to count things for me. And then if I look behind the curtains on the attribute table of this data, not only has it run for me a total summary count of incidents, but I also have unique counts of incidents for each polygon by each unique arrest type. So this is a major, major time saver for you as you're trying to do counting operations of incidents against polygons. Without having to do this iteratively, it's going to run it for you all at once. You could apply this to crime type, you could apply it to year or day of the week or month or any other type variable that you might have, and it'll run iteratively all those counts for you. So really nice tool to have to do that if you have an advanced license, and a reason to take a look at getting an advanced license to support the work that you do. The next tool that I want to show is the percent change tool and also the select by date and time tool. So in this case, I've got some 2018 violent crimes, and what I want to do is select out some data so that I can look at how the third quarter of the year compared to the second quarter of the year. To do that, I go to my select by date and time tool, and I can input my 2018 violent crimes data, and then I can pick a bunch of different selection options. First, if I had date ranges, I could use date ranges instead of a fixed single date, so a start date and an end date. In this case, I just have the reported date of crime that I want to use, so I'll use a single date field. And now I've got a bunch of different selection options that I can do. I can select by date, and that's going to give me a bunch of options. I could select by a date range, by a single date, by recency, and in that particular option, I can pick the time slice that I would be interested in. And so I could say, 3 months or 28 days. I also could use this bottom option by comparative time period. And I know the terminology here is a little bit confusing, but what we're essentially doing here is this is giving you the ability to select the period before the current 28-day period. So if you need to be able to be building a current period and a previous period, the way that you would do that is use the by recency, select a 28-day period, run the tool, and then run the tool again and use the by comparative time period and the 28 days again, and then you'd have the current period and the previous 28 days ready to go. You've got a bunch of other options here. You can select by time of day range, so you've just got clocks that you can put in. You can pick by day of the week. So I can select, we've already pre-built in weekend only or weekdays only, but you can also just have a set of checkboxes for picking the particular days of the week that you want. And then there's also a select by month option. So I can select the months that I want. So pretty straightforward and easy to use. And the output of that tool would look something like this, where I've created a couple of different selections. The larger points are my third quarter violent crimes, and the smaller points are my second quarter crimes. You may have noticed that on all of our points, we've got a new set of crime and incident related symbols. These are all available now through our local government style package for ArcGIS Pro. So if you Google local government style X, you will find this and you can download it and begin using it for ArcGIS Pro. And all of those symbols will be available in ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Enterprise at the June release. So from those two layers, now when I want to run the percent change tool, here's the inputs that I need for the percent change tool. My current period, so in that case it would be my Q3 violent crime selection, and my previous period would be my second quarter violent crime selection, and the area of comparison for my polygons, and that's my police precincts. I run the tool, and then what I get back is a graduated color map that looks like this, where areas of increase are shown in red and areas of decrease are shown in blue. And we've even pre-rendered the labels for you as well. So it'll render the percent change, and then it'll also render in this label style, current period from previous period. So it makes it very easy to quickly spin up a nice looking percent change map with your data. The next thing to show is density change. So just like percent change, you need to be able to have a current period and a previous period for the density change. So density change tool is in the density analysis tool set there. So along with kernel density, you'll find the density change. And the way this is structured is you simply need the input current period and the input previous period raster. So the way that you run this tool is the first thing you do is you make your selections. In this case, I'm comparing daytime to nighttime events. So I'm going to turn that off first. Here's my daytime calls for service, and then my nighttime calls for service. I've already done those selections. We won't redo the selections for brevity's sake. And then I've run a kernel density on each of those. So for the daytimes, we ran a kernel density. And then using the exact same parameters for the density tool, we did the same thing and ran the kernel density for the nighttime calls for service. Now, it's really important that when you run these kernel densities and you want to create a density change map, that the parameters that you're using to run the kernel densities for both the current period and the previous period are exactly the same. Now I take those rasters and I bring them in here. So it would be current period as the daytime and then the nighttime. And then the output of this tool will be a raster that looks like this, where I'm able to see in red the areas that got hotter in the nighttime, and the areas in blue that got cooler in the nighttime compared to call locations in the daytime. The next tool that we have is our incident sequence tool. And so in this particular case, I have a motor vehicle theft series that I've been working with my investigators on, and we believe this series to be related, and I need to visualize the sequencing and the order in which these events had occurred to help frame how we're going to plan an operational response to try to catch this guy because it's been a very active series. So to do this, I can utilize the sequence tool. The parameters are an input point feature. So my motor vehicle theft series is going to create an output feature class, and then I can sort by a date field. So I want the reported date. And then if I had multiple sets of data, and I'll show you this in just a minute, I also have the ability to group by a unique value in my data. And so the use case there is AVL data. When you want to be able to discover the unique tracks of each vehicle, you could add into the group field the vehicle ID number. I'll show you that in a minute. So when I run this tool, the output of this particular tool is two things. You get a point layer that has a symbol on it that shows you the number of the series that each point is, and then you get a sequence line. So now it becomes very easy to see that the first incident happened here, and then that offender kind of went out a little bit and then came back in closer to downtown. That helps to understand the pattern of activity that has implications for operationalizing some kind of response with the serial offender. The second example is around AVL data. And so in this particular case, I have some AVL point data from a bunch of patrols in and around Washington, D.C. In this case, I would use my AVL data. I would sort by my report date field or my date field, and then I could group by the unit ID. And then when I would run that tool, what I will get back is a distinct set of points and lines for each unique officer or each vehicle ID. So in this case, the sequencing points aren't super relevant for me. What I really needed is the distinct path that each of those units took on that those AVL points represent. So it's easier for me to visualize the sequencing of that activity. So that's a capability now out of the box with this tool as well. Then the last tool that we have is our incident path tool, and that links two layers together based on a common attribute. And the most common example of this is motor vehicle thefts to motor vehicle recovery locations. Our motor vehicle thefts in yellow and recovery locations in green. I simply need to select the input origin points, and so those are the thefts, and then the destination points, which are the recoveries. I pick the origin identifier field, so what's the unique ID field for the origin layer, and that's offense ID, and the same thing for the destination field, and that's also offense ID. When I run this, what I'm going to get back is simply a line layer with an arrow that's going to show you the directionality from the origin location to the destination. So in this particular example, it makes it easy for me to visualize the fact that I have some thefts that occurred across the city, but all seem to be recovered in essentially the same location area. So this may indicate that this is part of a serial offender pattern because the recoveries are all going to a very distinct location. So that's one of the use cases where you have a kind of a one-to-one relationship between two layers, and you're able to use these linking arrows to connect the two layers based on a common unique ID. But the other use case is around kind of one-to-many relationships. And in this particular instance, I have gang territories. So these polygons, these different colored polygons represent some different gang territories. And I also have gang member home addresses for each of those gangs. And I want to understand the distribution of where the gang members live relative to where their gang territories are. And if I find overlap where a gang member lives nearby to another gang territory, maybe that's an indication that there's a level of risk there that we want to be aware of. You could apply this equally to arrest locations, as I mentioned, to arrest locations, to arrestee home locations, any of those one-to-many kinds of relationships. The tool works exactly the same. In this case, I would select gang territories to gang members. And what's kind of cool that we built into this tool is this, it doesn't have to be 2 point layers. You can use a polygon layer, and the tool will actually calculate the centroid of the polygon layer to do the connection without you having to do that work. So it's one little time saver step, which is nice. You connect them on their common ID, which in this case is gang name. And what you get back is those connecting lines that help you understand the relationship of the centroid of the polygon to where all of the gang members are located. So that's a look at all of the custom tools that are on the crime analysis toolbar. There is, as you may have noticed, that there's lots of other tools that are here that are out of the box. We're not getting into them because they're kind of standard tools that are already ready and available for you. But that gives you a sense that at the first release, the new capabilities that will be part and parcel of this crime analysis toolbox that will hopefully save you lots of time and make your work a little bit more effective and efficient.
In the interest of time, let's skip through the poll question and just go on to what you get with the toolbar and how you get it.
Sounds good. So how do you get this, and what are you going to get with it? Well, when you will download this, you'll be asked to do a download, and in the downloaded file, it'll be a zip file, and it's going to come with two things. First, it's going to come with the ArcGIS Pro add-in. All you'll have to do is double-click to install that add-in onto your computer. And then secondly, it's also going to come with an example ArcGIS Pro project that's going to have demo data as well as demonstration output results of all the custom tools. In fact, it's the exact same project that you just saw me demonstrate today. You'll be able to get it in one of two ways. If you already happen to have the solution deployment tool for ArcGIS Pro, you'll be able to go in there, select the crime analysis toolbar, and it'll deploy that linked file into your enterprise portal, whether it's ArcGIS Enterprise or ArcGIS Online, and then you can grab that and download it onto your local machine. The solution deployment tool is a really great way to deploy all of our solutions, in particularly the web app solutions, because it deploys all the layers, the maps, and the application fully configured, ready to go. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at this tool, that's one other tool that you should think seriously about adding to your collection as well. It's very handy for deploying new solutions from Esri. If you don't have that, you just needed the simplest way to do it, you can go to our law enforcement solutions page, find the crime analysis solution, press download. It's going to ask you to log in with your Esri account, and then you'll be able to get that, download that zipped file so that you're able to install it onto your computer. For those of you, and we had a number of you who have not yet started to use ArcGIS Pro, and that's the place that you'll need to start if you want to be able to use the toolbar. So how do you go about doing that? Well, to get at ArcGIS Pro licensing and installers, you need to talk to the administrator of your licensing, Esri licensing at your agency. They're going to have access to something called my.esri.com that enables agency administrators of licenses to get access to installer files and license keys. And ArcGIS Pro has a number of different ways in which it can be licensed. It can be licensed either in the standard ways through single-use authorization files or concurrent use, but then it also can be connected to your ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise named user account. So it can be enabled through your portal, so you just log in with your username and boom, ArcGIS Pro works. If you don't know who that person is in your agency, contact Esri customer service at service@esri.com, and they can help you identify who that person is in your agency who has rights to get at the my.esri.com portal to get the installer and to get your licensing files. A couple of things for folks doing government work that are always considerations around hardware. ArcGIS Pro does require Windows 7 or higher. You need to have a 64-bit machine. It's a 64-bit app, so it needs to have a 64-bit machine. You really need to have at least 4 gigs of RAM to be able to do that, to work with it, but you really should have 8 or more. And you need to have 32 gigs of storage minimum available for it. And John mentioned this a while ago, but it's really important to note, ArcMap and ArcGIS Pro can be deployed on the exact same computer at the same time. So there's no need to feel like you have to pick one or the other. You can have them both. You can play with Pro as you learn it and do your day-to-day with ArcMap still until you're comfortable to be able to go over to ArcGIS Pro full-time. A couple resources. As I mentioned before, the solution is going to be available with the June ArcGIS release. You'll be able to find it at solutions.arcgis.gov, scroll down to the local government section, click one over on the carousel to the law enforcement area, and you'll see it here. It'll be listed as the crime analysis solution. We'll be releasing, if not at the end of June, early in July, a free training lesson associated with using the toolbar at learn.arcgis.com. And we hope to have a whole bunch more additional free web courses available for you later this year as well. And John and myself will be at many of the upcoming user conferences to do workshops on this toolbar. So you can find us obviously at the Esri user conference in July in San Diego. We'll be in Newport Beach for the International Association of Crime Analysts conference in California. We'll be in Munich later this year for the European Crime Analysis Conference, IALEA next year in 2019, and many of the other conferences in 2019. So you can get a chance to have some hands-on training with the toolbar as well. I mentioned this a little bit before, but we couldn't build these solutions without the support of our user communities. And when we build these solutions, we reach out to many of you. There's a lot of interest in supporting this particular development of this particular tool, and there's a number of folks that were integrally involved in this who are active analysts in the profession. So Andrew Blay in San Francisco, Jonas Bauman in Kansas City, Matt Harris at Sonoma County, Barry Fosberg in Houston PD, Blake Christensen at Cincinnati, Isaac Van Patten in Roanoke, Nick Portnell at Thames Valley Police, Andrew Burnett at Police Scotland, and Olive Powell at Avon and Somerset Constabulary. Thank you very much for your help in beta testing this toolbar. It's made the results of the tool a heck of a lot better. And a big thank you to the folks on our solutions team, in particular our developer Ryan Cosby, who spent an inordinate amount of time working on this tool and has really done a terrific job being responsive to the needs of our analysts. Thank you very much, Ryan, and thank you, Walt and Lindsay and Chris and all the other folks on our team who've contributed to building this particular tool. With that, I know we're running a little short on time, but we want to make sure we had an opportunity to answer a few questions before we wrap up the webinar. John, were there a couple of questions that popped up that we should focus on?
Yeah, we got lots of questions. Let's just answer one or two real quick before we go. The first one I think that we saw a lot of is development and configuration of the toolbar. Is it customizable?
The toolbar is, you could add in additional tools to it if you wanted to. I'm not really clear on the use case and the example of the question. If you wanted to build a toolbar or reconfigure any of the ribbons in ArcGIS Pro, that is a supportable out-of-the-box capability. So you can modify the analysis ribbon, for example, and only show the tools that you most recently use. So there's kind of a broader capability that's enabled through ArcGIS Pro to configure ribbon experiences that you can take advantage of depending upon the particular needs that you have in your agency.
Yeah, and we didn't have a lot of time to get into tasks and maybe in another webinar, but we will also be adding all those other solutions that are in ArcMap currently down the road in future releases, such as the repeat and near repeat analysis and cell phone analysis. So our users can look forward to that stuff coming out. Let's just do one more real quick. Credit consumption. What, if any, credit consumption is involved in use of the toolbar?
There's only one tool that consumes credits, the Enrich Layer tool. No other tools consume credits. So if you want to use the Enrich Layer tool, it does consume credits. Nothing else consumes credits. If you're confused about ArcGIS Pro generally and how it relates to ArcGIS Online or the other web GIS tools, ArcGIS Pro is a desktop GIS application. It installs and sits on your local computer. It does not have to have any kind of dependencies or connection to anything out on the internet. It can behave identically to ArcMap the way you currently use it if that's what you need. It works really well and is well integrated with WebGIS if you want it to be, so that you can search cleanly and use layers that exist in your portal, but you don't have to do any of that stuff. It can behave in the exact same desktop GIS way as ArcMap currently does and can consume no credits at all. You don't have to use that tool, and it just is a desktop application. We've just built in some of these additional capabilities for you where it makes sense that you might be interested in.
Great. We got a lot of questions about the new tools, particularly the 80/20 analysis. Sorry, we're out of time. We'll follow up directly with all of you that had questions about it. And as Chris mentioned, we're going to be all over the place at conferences talking about this, and look forward to a lot of lessons, online learned lessons coming out to teach you what these tools can do. Sorry. As I mentioned, we have the next webinar in August is going to be machine learning with spatial statistics for ArcGIS Pro. And if you want to follow up with Chris or I directly, go on to the next one, Chris. Here's our contact information. Send either of us an email, jbeck@esri.com or cdelaney@esri.com, and we'd be happy to chat with you about these tools, anything you saw today or anything else for that matter. Thanks, Chris. I know we covered a lot. You're probably worn out, but thanks all for attending, and we'll see you next time.